Hello? Is anybody there? I don't know. I can't tell if anybody's there. I'm not in the business of monitoring whether or not people are in a specific place. But what I can tell you is that, hello, I am here. This is Nick. I'm back with you again for another episode of HEYS Reviews Lives. Now, the episode I've got for you today, I've been working on pretty hard, and I'm pretty happy with the layout and the journey that I want to take you on. So this is episode 5, Lost in Transnation. Now, I'm very happy to be bringing this episode to you. I've compiled a bunch of articles that we're going to look at and dissect. Found some primary source documents that I want to put on your radar. And also, I have no less than 5 books to talk about and recommend on today's episode. Yes, you heard that correctly. I'm going to be putting 5 books on your radar that I think are valuable, worth preserving, worth reading, and help us understand some of the big picture, including history going back to the 60s. So what's going to happen on today's episode, we're going to start in the present time and see what's going on at the moment, and then sort of trace it back and then see where this all started. And the idea is that it will give you a better perspective on understanding the things that are going on these days and kind of help you be less likely to be propagandized, less likely to be emotionally manipulated, to fall into traps which might cause you to argue with loved ones and family and friends, and because that's what a lot of this stuff is designed to do. It's designed to drive a wedge. So the topic that we're looking at today, I think when you boil it down, is really there to drive a wedge between young people and old people, and also between men and women. So it's kind of it's like a multi wedge. It does multiple things at the same time. And so without any further ado, let's get right into it, and let's have a look at the first article that we've got to talk about today. So this is from the Mail Online, and this is the section of the Mail Online that is known as Female, which I hadn't heard of before. This is quite an old article. It's from it's actually from a year ago. But when I was researching and putting together this episode, I remembered this story and I thought, oh, I should probably get that in there because it's very, very relevant to what we're talking about today. So this is a story from November 2022, and it's about a student who's 19 years old becoming Miss America's first ever transgender local pageant winner, as critics accuse the woke competition of allowing opportunities to be stolen away from female contestants. So right off the bat, you can see the purpose. Without even reading any more of the story, you can see the purpose of this article. They've put it into the female section of the website. Mail Online, one of the most read websites on the internet for people to get their news and their views and their opinions, to get their download of what they should be thinking and feeling. Right away, they've put something in there that's supposed to drum up resentment and anger, and fury is a word that pops up in another article, as we'll see as we move forward. But let's go on to this one. So this is early this month, Brian Nguyen, 19 years old, made Miss America history when she became the first transgender woman to win the Miss Greater Derry title. Now, Brian has a little uptick line above the I in his name, so I wonder if that changes the pronunciation to Brian, maybe, or I'm not sure, but I'm going to stick with Brian because it seems like the name that's most appropriate to me. The Miss Greater Derry Scholarship Program, which is set up by Miss America organization, welcomes contestants between 17 and 24 who are judged on their achievements in scholastic aptitude, talent, character, community, service, and poise. It's pretty interesting that they don't get judged on their, biological sex. But I don't make the rules. So here we've got a picture of Brian in the middle there. And all together on the steps are presumably the winners of the different areas in Ireland and who've entered the competition. And they all look really happy. And these are all the different contestants that are it's funny how it's a Miss America competition, and yet they're in Ireland. But anyway, so we learned that the aspiring model is the first transgender woman to win a local title. And the New Hampshire-based student said there were no words to explain how much the win meant to her. I bet there weren't. Seeing the news that Brian Nguyen won the pageant made me think how I would feel if I was beaten by a large biological male after spending months training and preparing for the contest. So this is a quote from Miss Great Britain, 1998. They interviewed her for the article, and yeah, she's reflecting on, imagine what these other girls feel like. I mean, for the most part, they all look pretty comfortable and pretty happy. You know, these smiles are genuine, but then again, putting on a genuine smile for a camera is kind of what they're trained to do. That's kind of their speciality, isn't it? So this one here doesn't look so impressed. She's got a bit of a face of like, is this really happening? And she looks like she's casting a sideways glance to somebody over there. Like, yeah, wow, interesting. But we're learning, we're getting a quote from Miss Great Britain, previous winner, 1998. Here she is, very beautiful lady. She says, winning the competition opened up a world of opportunities to me, a result of being allowed to fairly compete in an era absent of woke ideology. Sadly, these young women today are not being given the same chance. Yeah, so it's the woke ideology is rearing its ugly head again. If you saw my last broadcast where we were picking apart the narrative that's getting pushed, that the woke ideology leftists are joining with the extreme Islamic jihadists, and they're coming together to form a new existential threat to Western society, you'll be very familiar with this narrative and how this woke ideology is being sort of drummed up and demonized in certain publications to a certain audience to paint it as the enemy and the most concerning thing that we need to deal with. And actually, there's a lot of good stuff being said there. It is actually pushing a lot of very bad information onto vulnerable minds. So let's carry on with the story. So this is from the former Miss GB, pictured in 2021. So she's still looking good. And she says, Brian has been lucky enough to be born in the right era. So I suppose the implication there is if this was 20 years ago, 30 years ago, there's no way this man would be allowed into the pageant and allowed to compete. And yeah, she's right. So meanwhile, GB News host Mark Dolan commented, yes, folks, we've reached peak woke. We're an intact biological man. And I thought that phrase was extremely good. He is intact. I don't need to explain what that means. I think you can figure that out. Calls himself a woman and beats a group of actual young girls in a female beauty competition. And they keep using his name, Brian, over and over again. I don't think that's an accident. They've got another feature here of, who's this? This is Anita Green, a 29-year-old transgender woman. She filed a lawsuit against a beauty pageant and had it dismissed. And they said, no, you can't compete. So this is an ongoing thing. It's happening in America. It's happening here as well. And we'll find out as well it's also happening in other countries, but mainly in and around Europe. You know, there's parts of the world where this thing just gets laughed at. I've seen a documentary which was called What is a Woman? And in this documentary, the gentleman who created it flies out to Africa and he asks a bunch of tribespeople there, like, hey, did you, in your tribe, can men become women and women become men? And they just laugh. They just find the whole thing hilarious. And so there's parts of the world where this is just kind of bizarre and silly and strange. Then there's other parts of the world where it's very common and it has been for a long time. Or I don't mean very common, but where it's completely accepted and normalized and just part of everyday life. You know, Thailand springs to mind. What's happening now, though, is anything but a grassroots movement and that is organic, which we will learn about a little later in the episode. But so let's carry on. The end of this article tells us, not everyone has been so critical of Brian's landmark win. Followers rushed to congratulate her in her latest Instagram post. One replied, Miss New Hampshire, better get ready. Someone else said, you're amazing, follow your bliss. And a third one said, beautiful queen inside and out. And so these quotes are worth highlighting because this is the kind of, you know, these are just online quotes, right? These are Instagram posts. No idea if they're real, if they're legit, if they're genuine, who they're from. Just texts on a screen, and they're getting quoted as though this is the real opinions of real people, and we don't know if that's the case or not. So we can see in this article that one, it's targeted it's in the women's section, so it's targeted at women, and I think it's pretty clear to say that they're trying to drive a bit of outrage, a bit of anger, a bit of at the very least, they're trying to make women uncomfortable. Look, this, and it's not even like Brian is a particularly attractive anything, right? I mean, look at the rest of these girls that he's standing on these steps with. They're pretty, they're young, they've got youthfulness, vitality. You could see why they've entered these kind of competitions and why they've been put forward. Brian, you just can't see that. There's nothing about him that suggests he would be a good beauty pageant winner, as far as up to me. But, you know, maybe it's his character, his talent, his poise. It must be his poise. Look at that poise. Poor poise is the word that springs to mind. But we can see that this article is aimed at drumming up some, you know. But then at the very end, it finishes with a lot of praise for Brian, which is going to make you go, oh, but other people accept it. People are gushing, like it says here. People are gushing with praise on the online, and they're praising how beautiful and amazing this person is for doing what he's doing. So it's a double-edged thing. At one hand, it's kind of like, oh, I'm going to give you all this information that's going to rile you up and make you angry. And then when your emotion is at a certain level, I'm going to say, yeah, but it's normal. Everyone thinks it's fine, and you're an asshole if you don't think it's fine. That is what the purpose of this kind of reporting is for. All right, so let's move on. So following on a similar topic, this is actually November this year. Where's this sort of movement currently? So that last story was from a year ago. This one's from this year. So this is the story about Miss Universe, and it is collapsing on itself. The beauty pageant's redefinition of feminine beauty has done it no favors. So this is an interview. It's got some quotes from Thai entrepreneur Annie Jakrajutatip. And she says, I wanted to create something that was run by women for women, not something for men to ogle over. So she acquired the Miss Universe pageant in 2022. And it's her group that bought and is now running the Miss Universe contest, and she wants to create something that is run by women for women. The only issue there is Jakrajutatip is a male who claims to be transgendered. So right there, we can kind of see how, as I said at the beginning, this wedge is starting to be put in between men and women. Okay, so there's going to be some people who are saying, well, you want to create something by women for women, yet you're a man biologically, you know, at birth. Your chromosomes are a certain configuration. People are going to be uncomfortable with that. But if they express that discomfort and they express that they're not at ease with that situation, then there's people waiting to shout them down, to call you bad, to make you feel guilty, to tell you that you're wrong to feel that way. Okay? But let's find out what the market thinks, right? Because this is a Miss Universe. It's a well-known thing. What did the market decide? Well, the new venture has not gone well. On November the 8th, just 10 days before this year's 72nd annual Miss Universe pageant, JKN Global filed for bankruptcy following an 80% drop in its stock value over the past year, and after missing a September the 1st deadline for a $12 million bond payment. So it's not going well. Since acquiring Miss Universe last year, Jakrajutatip has broadened the contestant pool to include not only more transgendered women, 2 of whom finished in the top 20 and competed this year, but also women up to the age of 28 and women who are married, divorced, or mothers. So she's changing what is allowed and who is allowed to join and enter it, and presumably that is making people not so interested in it anymore, and they don't want to spend money on the tickets. And another decision that has not gone well is the decision to host this year's pageant in El Salvador, which has spent $12 million for the pageant rights and another $60 million on supporting infrastructure. and this was criticized amid that country's economic woes and political crisis. The last Miss Universe pageant held there in 1975 sparked deadly protests. Wow, I didn't know about that. I should have looked that up. But yeah, perhaps you got to think a little more carefully about where to hold these things and which kind of cultures and societies are receptive and comfortable with the kind of contestants and the rule changing that's going on. The traditional beauty pageant is, it was done a certain way for a certain group of people, and there were rules, and it made sense. And all that is being broken down and shifted and kind of dissolved with a new, strange, unusual, unfamiliar, uncanny thing happening, which we all have to pretend is fine and normal, unless, you want to get cancelled or lose. But as we can see, they've lost. The market has decided they're not happy with it. So a majority of countries sent no contestant this year, with only 84 participating. And interestingly, I didn't know about this. They're saying in this article, the pageant is a far cry from the Miss Universe owned from 1996 to 2015 by former President Donald J. Trump, who revitalized it. So I didn't know Trump was the previous owner for, what is that? That's 9 years. No, it's not. It's 19 years. That's something new to me. I didn't know that. But yeah, he sold it right before he ran for president, and he sold it for $28 million. And Jakra Jutatip, her group picked it up for $20 million, and its value will probably continue to decline as it tries to redefine standards of beauty. And that's what it's all about, really. Beauty pageants, the clue is in the name. It's a beauty pageant, isn't it? It's a contest to, let's praise the form of the human, and let's see let's celebrate the beauty and the perfection of the human form. And yeah, it's a bit shallow, and yeah, it could be called a bit objectifying women and the contestants. But if everybody involved is a consenting adult and they want to be involved and they want to have that shallow competition on looks and beauty, have at it, let them do it. But now there's this redefinition of what is beautiful and what is acceptable. And if you disagree with that, it's no longer that beauty is in the eye of the beholder. It is now more like beauty is what we tell you it is. And if you disagree with it, you're an awful bigot. So moving on. So this is an article from Spiked. And this is also very recent from this year. And it's telling us about how women are fighting back against the trans takeover of sport. So this is a bit of good news. From pool players to boxers, female athletes are refusing to compete against biological men. So I covered in either my first or second live stream this kind of story about how I think it was exactly this: the British female pool player, and also there was a kickboxer who refused to fight a man in the final. So in both cases, I think they had to forfeit the competitions they were in. But it's good to see that, as it tells us here, across the sporting world, more and more women are arriving at the same conclusion, namely that allowing men to compete in their sports is unfair at best and downright dangerous at worst. Right. Yeah. I mean, you think, oh, well, it's just pool. There can't be that much of an advantage in pool, but there are advantages. Players born male have longer arms and a longer range. In 32 years, I've never witnessed any biological woman with anything like the power and velocity when it comes to the break shot. And this is the crux of the matter. It's like your chromosome configuration, whether you're a man or a woman, whether you're male or female, dictates what your body can and cannot do to a certain degree. And there's more overlap than there is difference, but the differences there are there is absolutely crucial. And it's not a fair fight to put a man and a woman against each other. The men will always have a natural biological advantage. And of course, there's women who can kick the crap out of men because they've trained for it and they've practiced. And men nowadays, in a lot of places, are kind of flabby and overweight and lazy and probably don't even know how to throw a punch, myself included. But on the whole, women are at a disadvantage when it comes to physical conflict. Men are just stronger, more powerful, and they can use that advantage in any sporting competition or any physical competition. And so what we're learning about here is things like pool, boxing, cycling, weightlifting. These are all being infiltrated by men calling themselves women and then rising very quickly to the top to beat and win actual women. And it's not something that I think should be allowed to happen because it's unfair. It's not a fair fight. It's not a fair competition. But what's happening is I'm glad that women, because the women who've spoken out about this historically over the last few years have been cancelled, deplatformed, they've been doxxed, they've been kicked out of the teams they're in, they've had to do interviews anonymously to talk about how uncomfortable they are and how unhappy they are at this situation. And that's just not right, because it means our women are losing their protected status. You know, as the children and the women and the elderly of society, they're the vulnerable ones. They should be protected by the men in society. They shouldn't be, have their changing rooms and sports and activities and competitions infiltrated, right? And I wouldn't blame them for feeling uncomfortable in that situation. But in this case with Bissonnette, and this is the boxer female Canadian boxer who I talked about in a previous live stream. Walmsley is the man she refused to fight, and he got upset with her public refusal to fight him. And he said that this kind of behavior puts athletes at risk of being excluded or receiving personal attacks based on hearsay. So you should be excluded. My friend, you should be fighting men. If you want to be a boxer, go and box other men, right? You're not going to get excluded from that. They'll let you in to do that. So, you know, it's an appeal to emotion. It's like, oh, you're excluding me and you're opening me up to personal attacks, and then maybe he'll get depressed and maybe he'll, I don't know, become a junkie or something, and it'll be Katia Bissonnette's fault for refusing to let him punch her in the face. Which is just stupid when you put it like that, isn't it? Absolutely makes no sense. So that is a little sort of whistle tour of where we are at in the current day. And then one more to round that trio of stories off. This is also from this month. GQ Men of the Year list sparks fury as over half honorees are female, with critics blasting disgraceful choice. Men are seen as weak and laughable, while women are glorified. So, as I said at the start of the stream, we can see that the wedge is being driven between men and women. Here's another, and you know, I don't read the mail as a habit. I do find stories and talk about them here, but it seems to me the more of these stories that I look at on the mail online, the more their purpose is to just divide people and rile people up. I mean, right here it's like fury, sparks fury, and then we'll see further down in the article the evidence that they provide to back up that people are furious is in itself questionable. But anyway, what's the story? Well, GQ, it's a famous magazine, and they have a Man of the Year list, and it sparked outrage because there's a lot of females on it, on the Man of the Year list. And the magazine does not specify the gender of those on the list, on the Man of the Year list. Instead, detailing GQ Men of the Year celebrates stars from entertainment, fashion, and sport who have made 2023 a year to remember. So the Man of the Year list, the Men of the Year list, does not specify the gender of those on the list. What is going on? So the UK list of 20 stars has 11 on it that are female, and there's a list of them. I don't think I've heard of any of these people. Nope. And then this is the front cover that they went with, which is a picture of Kim Kardashian with a thumb in her mouth, dressed in men's clothes. Well, they're not men's clothes, but, you know, it's the traditional sort of business attire, shirt, tie, and eating Cheetos, which is an American snack for poor people. 1 second, I'm going to have to clear my throat. We're back. So this is the cover, and people have already also been upset about this, apparently, as well. This cover has sparked outrage. So the article goes on to give us a bunch of screenshots from Twitter. And I'm not going to read through these. But this is basically what this article is all about, I think. I mean, they want you to feel in this fury. They want to, the Mail Online wants to spark fury in you, because look at all these outraged people and what they're saying on the internet. Oh my goodness, look at all this fury. You can just feel it oozing through the screen. So this is a picture of this is a British journalist. So she was shortlisted for Man of the Year by GQ. I think this woman here was also shortlisted for Man of the Year by GQ. So back to Kim, her front cover. Kim's GQ spread featured her dressed as a man in a number of stunning shots. Is that stunning? I mean, that looks like she just got out of the shower. She is wearing the clothes of presumably the man she slept with last night, because maybe, I don't know, she's lost hers. And she's eating Cheetos for breakfast. And that's a stunning picture. I don't really know much about photography, but I don't think my idea of stunning matches the Daily Mail's idea of stunning. So we've got, the article goes on to give us more explosive responses from critics, which I'm not going to read because they're all just designed to tell you what to think and how to feel. And then again, more screenshots from Twitter. That I'm going to have to skip past, but it was a revealing dress by Alex Scott. Another plunging black figure-hugging dress. And then, so we've got all these women, and they all look pretty good. And then we've got the first picture of a man here. It was just Tom Daly, and he's dressed, well, have a look. What do you think? He's carrying a purse. He looks like a grandma, to be frank about it. It looks kind of like, I mean, my granny is way better dressed than this fella. But that's what they're dressing the men up as. And this is the GQ Men of the Year, and this is the kind of thing, the clothes that are being put on them. But, there is historical precedence for this. In 2018, Rose McGowan became the first female recipient of a GQ Man of the Year award. But that's not going back that far, is it? 2018. That's 5 years ago. So it's not a new thing. It's not like all this outrage and all this uproar and fury is because, well, this has never happened before. How dare you do it? No, they've been planting the seed. They've been gradually introducing it. It's been a slow boil the frog type scenario. And it's been going on for quite a long time. But they're just more and more, now that they've seeded it into the culture in various ways, now it's time to kind of switch on the fury and get people angry and arguing and frustrated and divide people over it, Rose McGowan, I think, this is back to Kim again. So she was one of the 3 cover stars of the US edition ahead of the awards. She was branded Tycoon of the Year after launching Skims menswear and posed in an androgynous suit and tie for the cover spread, taking to Instagram to share, "Hi, I'm the GQ Man of the Year." And she's not the first female to be on the cover of the annual edition. The Rihanna, Jennifer Lopez, Jennifer Aniston, Scarlett Johansson. So that's not new. But she is launching a menswear range, and she's been named Man of the Year, and she's a woman. Again, here's a load more tweets to tell you how to feel, give you ideas on what you could say online. And then we get to the UK honorees. So the UK Men of the Year. Let's have a look what we got here. And there's quite a good selection here, but one thing I would just draw your attention to and just have a look at what we've got in the UK awardee nominees or honorees. I don't know if that is a difference between nominee. But I guess these people are going over there for some reason or another. They must have done something good. This guy's grabbing his crotch. This guy's drinking 2 bottles of vodka at the same time. These 3 are, I don't know what they're doing. They look like they're working, definitely. They look like they got jobs. So we got a bunch of people here. Nice. Very, very representative of UK population. Gary Lineker, controversial figure. for absolutely no reason whatsoever. Another good example of the sort of gender blurring going on here. Yeah, so that's that bit, and then the article actually just becomes a whole thing about Kanye West and Kim Kardashian. So I didn't highlight any of the rest of it because that's where it went. It started off being about one thing, and then it just ended up being about Kim Kardashian. And I don't think any of us should have to spend more time thinking about Kim Kardashian than we might do already. But if you want to, then feel free to go ahead. But it's not something I want to encourage in my audience. But so that's kind of an intro into where we're currently at, where this issue of gender blurring, of driving a wedge between men and women, how it's done, the kind of propaganda that's put out there to rile people up and get them sort of furious and to show, look at all these comments online. And the purpose of showing you the comments online is to tell you this is how the majority think and this is how you should think. So if there's loads of comments online of people calling a specific person brave and stunning and beautiful and wonderful, then you should adopt that position as well. Otherwise, you get locked out of society. So I wanted to move on a little bit now from the headlines, the fury-inducing, opinion-shaping propaganda that's being put out there, and move to another story, which is on the same topic but slightly different. And this was interesting when I was researching this and having a look at it through the lens of what is the mainstream message and how do we dissect it to find out how they're trying to use it against us. I found that there were two versions of this headline of this story, and here they are. So the headline here was flawed census that recorded 260,000 trans people must be investigated. And then at some point, that headline became ONS must be investigated over flawed trans census data, says campaign group. And actually, sorry, this is the new one. This is the second, the one that is still live on the website now. And this was what it used to be. So just before we go into the article, you can see that the first version, the first iteration of this says the ONS, which is the Office of National Statistics here in the UK, must be investigated over some census data that was flawed. And then they decided to change that to read 260,000 trans people must be investigated. And it's just a very subtle difference, right? It's a really subtle change. In my opinion, my background as an English teacher, as a person who trained people to write academic essays and arguments, and I would say this headline is clearer. ONS must be investigated. Why? Because of the flawed trans census data. Who said that? A campaign group. That makes sense. For some reason, they thought it would be better to foreground the flawed census, but then leave you on the idea that 260,000 trans people must be investigated. So the one they changed it to actually sounds like they're calling to carry out an investigation of 260 trans people. Very subtle change, very small, but nonetheless, I was surprised to see that. But let's get into it. What's this story about? Well, this is Britain's statistics quango facing an official investigation over a faulty census question, which appears to have drastically overestimated the number of trans people in the country. So what happened here is they put a question on the survey, and the question said, "Is the gender you identify with the same as your sex registered at birth?" Now, you may or may not find that question confusing, depending on how much indoctrination you've had into this topic from wherever you get your indoctrination. But apparently this question was confusing for people whose first language was not English. And that's a significant chunk of the people who live here. And so they're reading this question and they're going, what? They're scratching their heads and they're sort of like, and this is apparently what led to anomalies, such as the greater proportion of people in the London boroughs of Newham and Brent declaring themselves trans, and more there than in places such as Brighton. And I can assure you right now that there is a pattern when it comes to populations and numbers of identification with non heterosexual, non-monogamous lifestyles and choices, right? And it's pretty interesting. Brighton is considered to be gay capital of England, and so you would expect there to be a higher percentage there. But this mistake led to an estimated 260,000 trans people being counted, which would be 0.5% of the population. Now, the article doesn't actually tell us the true number, but presumably, if this was a overinflated figure, it's even less than that. So we might be talking 0. I don't know, anything between 0.1. Well, no, it doesn't have to be that much, but up to 0.5. So it's less than 1%. It's less than 0.5% of the population, right? So this is key and critical to bring into this discussion in this episode, is that all this stuff that's going on, all this material that's being put out there, and all this emotion that's being pointed at and directed at this topic is all being done in the name of less than 0.5%, less than 0.5% of the population, which is a really, really, really tiny minority. The Office of National Statistics has admitted there were patterns in the data consistent with some respondents not interpreting the question as we had intended. It's a really wordy and kind of evasive way to say, yes, we cocked up and we made a mistake. I think you can hear some beeping vehicle driving past outside. Sorry if you can hear that. I think it's a road cleaner or something. I'm not sure. So the ONS basically says, yeah, okay, there's some patterns consistent with some respondents not interpreting this. But as we go on to read later, it actually turns out that they completely refuse to do anything about it. And they just say, no, we're not going to fix it. We're not going to rectify it. Even though there's this gender critical group called Sex Matters who were writing to the head of the ONS to demand an investigation. She said, despite warnings from many that its questions and guidance on sex and gender, I've seen so many typos in this article, it's embarrassing. She said, despite warnings from many that its questions and guidance on sex and gender identity were confusing and the categories were muddled, the ONS bullishly went ahead with them in the census. This was a costly mistake. The resulting data on gender identity are worse than useless, as they give the impression of certainty and detail on which decisions can be made. The ONS has dug in and refused to admit that this data is unreliable. So we are calling on the National Statistics Regulator to properly investigate and determine whether they meet the grade for national statistics. Right. So they're just digging in. They're just saying, no, we're not correcting it. We've done nothing wrong. We're going to carry on pushing bad data to inform people's worldview that has an impact on what people do with their time and their lives, what their perception of their own society and their nation is. We're just going to keep pushing and plow ahead with this terrible data. And, that's the common thing. That is the done thing. Bad data does not get rectified and cleaned up quickly enough. And all sorts of silly, erroneous assumptions are then baked into people's understanding of life and their societies and their worldview. So if you ask the average person, what percentage of people identify as LGBTQ, ABCD, XYZ plus, they'll tend to put their estimation much higher, like 5-10 times higher than is actually the case. And this is because the focus on that minority of people that has been amplified by television shows, social media, YouTubers, in our schools, as we will go on to see in a minute, and by articles and news stories pushed through the mainstream media machine. But they don't want to do anything about it. So they just want to allow you to carry on having a poor understanding and an inaccurate understanding of the world and the group and the society that you live in. Thanks, ONS. Thanks for looking out for us. And then the Telegraph wants to subtly change their headlines after the fact to, I don't know if this is deliberate. I don't know who made the judgment that this headline needs to be changed. But to me, flawed census that recorded 260,000 trans people must be investigated. What? Why? What for? What have they done? It sounds like they're a bunch of criminals and we need to be suspicious of them. I don't think that's the case. Certainly, some of them will be criminals, but that's just statistics, isn't it? Okay, so we're kind of getting more into now, like how is this? How does this happen, right? How does a tiny minority of people in a society get an overwhelming share of the limelight and the spotlight? Well, this might have something to do with it, which is a video that came out recently, published on the Daily Skeptic. And this is a video exposing the trans indoctrination, and that's indoctrination, in primary school. Parents have expressed outrage over a primary school inclusion lesson video depicting the story of a male teddy bear who believes he was born in the wrong body. And we have that clip here. It's a very short one, but I'll just play it to get it on the record.
If I tell you, said Thomas, you might not be my friend anymore. I'll always be your friend, Thomas. Thomas the teddy took a deep breath. I need to be myself, Errol. In my heart, I've always known that I'm a girl teddy, not a boy teddy. I wish my name was Tilly, not Thomas. Is that why you've been so sad? Errol asked. I don't care if you're a girl teddy or a boy teddy. What matters is that you are my friend.
All right. What matters is that you are my friend. Now, again, like as with anything, we got to be skeptical. This might be a real classroom. There's definitely some the tops of what look to be children's heads there. She looks like a teacher. It looks like a classroom. There's toys. There's rainbow on the wall. They've even blurred out something over there, which might be some sensitive information about, I don't know, class times or the school or something. So to me, it looks like it could be legit. But why is somebody standing at the back filming it and putting it out there? I don't know. Maybe they're trying to raise awareness about this. But this is a primary school. Okay, this is the kind of thing that's being talked about in our primary school. Being born in the wrong body. Do you feel uncomfortable in your body? What does your heart tell you? Listen to your heart, and everyone around you has to believe what's in your heart. And I always use the example of, like, if a child comes up to you and says, "Daddy, I'm a pirate," you say, "Oh, that's great, very cute. Enjoy yourself as a pirate. What are you gonna do? Bury some treasure? Fight a giant octopus?" It's a role-playing exercise in imagination, right? You don't take the child, chop its leg off, give him a peg leg, poke an eye out, give him an eye patch, and put a parrot on his shoulder, right? You might do the parrot bit. That's not as harmful. It's not as permanent. But you don't do the other stuff, do you? But this kind of idea of teaching children to just follow what's in their heart and you can be whatever you want to be, it's kind of insidious and it's very confusing, particularly for young people. But that's what they're getting in the primary school, at least here in the UK. What's going on in secondary school? Well, they're kind of going the other way now. So this is from the 21st November 2023. Schools are discouraged from letting pupils change their pronouns as ministers toughen up long overdue transgender guidance. So there's going to be a presumption against young people changing names. So what's been happening is since this whole movement has been amplified and pushed to young people via the various methods that's done, there's been a uptick, and that's kind of putting it mildly. But there's been a let's say a massive increase in the number of young children who are saying, well, I want to be, my name's Robert, but I don't want to be Robert anymore. I want to be Betty. And everyone, and they can go to their school teachers and they can tell their school teachers, and their school teachers have been sort of obligated to play along with it and say, okay, right, Robert is now Betty, and make an announcement. And then everybody around them has to start calling Robert Betty. And the people who refuse and carry on calling Robert Robert, well, they can get in trouble, they can get told off, they can get punished, right? And so it's done in the auspices of being a good thing to help people. It's again, the road to hell is paved with good intentions, but you can see how it could be abused and manipulated by somebody who was attention seeking, somebody who wanted to get other people in trouble, maybe a bully, like you have to call me Betty now, and if you don't, I'm telling, and then people can have their lives ruined. And so in high school, in secondary school, where there's already a lot of tension, a lot of hormones, a lot of change in the air, a lot of trying to figure out where you belong and how you fit in, trying to learn the ins and outs of friendships and romantic relationships, and working to do, trying to go through the school system, the pressure of having to perform and get good grades and make decisions that affect the rest of your life, such as career choices or university choices. Like, there's all sorts of stuff going on. And on top of that, you're going to throw into the mix, okay, anybody can change their name at any time. They can change their pronouns at any time, and you have to play along with it. Otherwise, you're the bad person. Go. It just sounds like an evil and insidious thing on the face of it. All right. But this article is saying that they've kind of decided here in England, at least, all right, enough is enough. And we're going to have some guidance which has a presumption against young people changing names. So it's saying pupils should be allowed to identify as the opposite sex only in very limited circumstances. Schools will be told under strict new rules. They need to tighten these things up, because as we've seen in the previous episode, there's fully grown adults who are switching to the other team and becoming female in order to compete against female and beat them in competitions, physical competitions and sporting competitions. So, I mean, if full-grown adults are doing that, what do you think children will do with this power to just demand that everybody around them now plays along with their sort of role play, with their character that they've come up with, right? And I'm not saying that there is never any legitimate experience whereby people are going through a lot of discomfort and unhappiness and psychological distress due to these kind of issues. What I am saying is that if you have this blanket rule that anyone can change at any time to be whatever they want, people are just going to abuse it and take the mick, and it's going to confuse especially young people. So it could be seen as good that there's some rules coming in, because messing with pronouns and gender and cross-dressing and all this kind of stuff, really that should be the domain of consenting adults with fully informed consent in the privacy of their own home. It's not something you need to bring into school, because it just encourages young people to get very messed up and mixed up and confused, and to dive into a world that is very nuanced and complex that they are not mature enough to handle or deal with. So not much to bring out of this story, just that the article is saying that schools' guidance needs to be robust and clear, that children cannot be affirmed as the sex they are not by adults in a school environment. So previously there have been some teachers saying, you can approach me and we will get you on that path of transitioning, and you don't need to tell your parents, and you don't need your parents to be involved. But obviously that's ridiculous. It just should be off the table. It should be a non-thing that isn't dealt with in school, because that's not what school's for. School is there to indoctrinate your children into the state's way of thinking, obviously. Safeguarding first approach needs to be brought in. It's irresponsible and unworkable to suggest that there are some unspecified situations where a school may be obliged to pretend that a boy is a girl or vice versa. Yeah, well said. Interestingly, this is from March. Some data that says LGBT young people's charity Just Like Us revealed 55% of teachers in England said they have at least one pupil who has come out as transgender. And this figure rises to 87% among secondary school teachers. and 23% of those polled. Right, so this is now becoming so commonplace that that almost all teachers are having to deal with this and seeing it happen in their classroom. And this is partly to do with social media pushing influencers and the creation of online communities which tell you that how you feel is the most important thing, and you know better than anyone else what you are and how you should live your life, and the rest of the world and all the people around you, they need to conform to your innate instinctive sense of self, which definitely hasn't been messed with by television and Hollywood and pop music and pop stars and reality TV and chemicals in the food and low nutrition and sedentary lifestyle and invasive Black Mirror technology. Like, none of that is feeding into this. It's just what do you know in your heart? What is your lived experience? And everyone else in the world has to fall in line to respect that and acknowledge it and reinforce it. It is just incredibly sinister to give that message to young people. It is teaching them to be myopic. You know, the world revolves around me, and what I know to be true is the truth. And it teaches them to be really self-centered and just nasty and wrapped up in their own, BS. And it, again, drives a wedge between young people and old people, because you're going to have some older parents out there who are like, look, snap out of it, it's stupid, get on with your life, you'll grow out of it, and just a straight talking to like that. And the majority of times people do grow out of it. The problem is if you commit to transitioning in one way or another and you start taking pills, you start taking hormone blockers, you start having surgery, then that stuff can be irreversible, and that can leave you in a really sorry state later in life when you realize that it was a phase you probably would have just grown out of, or that you would have learned to accept and integrate into your way of life, right? So the next article we're going to go on to is addressing this about, okay, well, what is done for and to these young people who decide that they do want to transition, and they decide that their lived experience is the fact of being born in the wrong body, and actually they don't want to be a boy Teddy, they want to be a girl Teddy. What is done for and to these people? Well, here's an article here which is by Hannah Barnes, and she's written a bestseller on the NHS gender, a best-selling book which is about this whole topic. And she's written an article to say, I spent years investigating the Tavistock Clinic. I have serious concerns about its replacement. What's the Tavistock Clinic? Well, the Tavistock Clinic is the UK's and I think the world's foremost gender and sex treatment service center. It's where young people get assigned. They have to go in there, and this is how they get assessed, and this is how they get treated, and they get helped in their transition. So Hannah Barnes says her book was almost not published, and now she says there are still voices that are being stifled. This article is epic. It is extremely long, but it's very detailed and very good as well. So Hannah Barnes has been, she says, there hasn't been much to smile about since I began researching and writing about the care provided to young people struggling with their gender identity. So she has been into this for quite a long time. When we spoke 2 years ago, Harriet was living with the consequences of testosterone and having a double mastectomy. So this is a young woman who's been in touch with Hannah. So she had, and she regretted taking testosterone and having a double mastectomy. Mastectomy is when you have your chest removed. She was 21 at the time, and this is 21 after, that all this happened, and she no longer identified as trans, and she had begun a process known as detransitioning, which is where you stop or reverse a transgender transition. So this is, I don't know the percentages of people, but this does happen. People get sort of caught up in the excitement of being a pirate and believing they're a pirate and wanting to be a swashbuckling, treasure collecting rapscallion of the seven seas. And eventually they go, okay, no, I'm not a pirate, actually. That was fun. But I thought I was, and everyone around me was encouraging me to be a pirate, but now I've got a peg leg and an eye patch, and I've only got one eye, and I can't get my leg or my eye back. It's the same thing, right? And this does happen. And this is the danger of teaching young people at such a young age and pushing them through this process. Again, if you want to do it when you're an adult and you have, been very conscientious in your explorations of the causes and the reasons why you might be feeling this way and what it means, and you've been very curious about all the different factors that might feed into it, and it's something that you choose to do as an adult, fully informed about the risks, have at it. It's up to you. It's your private life. You can do whatever you want. No problem there. But to be funneling children down into this, to be teaching them en masse and planting this seed that you might be born into the wrong body, it's really insidious. And this is what happens. People go along with it and then they regret it. Some do and some don't. But what this article is saying, Hannah's telling us that there isn't kind of like the last one, the assessment is not robust enough, right? But let's move on with the article and find out. The situation facing young people in England and Wales who are questioning or experiencing distress around their gender identity could scarcely be worse. More than 8,000 children are on the waiting list for help. Thousands more 16 and 17-year-olds have been removed from that list and told they'll instead need to decide if they want to be seen in adult gender clinics. Having waited for years in some cases, they'll never be seen in youth services. So what's happened is the demand for these services has skyrocketed and it has overwhelmed the system in place to deal with them. So what's causing that demand to skyrocket? Well, could it be the teacher who's standing in the classroom reading the books about the teddies who have been born in the wrong teddy body? Just throwing it out there. There's a timeline here which doesn't work. I can't skip through it, but it's interesting. We can look at the first entry on this. 2004, Susan Evans became the first to whistleblow about the precipitous referral of children in the clinic on to a medical path to change gender. So the first whistleblower who was concerned about this was doing her thing back 20 years ago, almost. So this has been going on for a long time, and it's not a new thing, right? In the decade before, referrals to GIDS had exploded from the hundreds to the thousands. GIDS is the Gender Identity Development Service at the Tavistock and Portman NHS Foundation Trust. So we're going from the hundreds to the thousand. The service struggled to cope. GIDS is currently seeing around 1,000 children. So she talks about how there needs to be a different approach, because what she's saying is that children are being pushed through this assessment and into the treatment and the transition process without having gone through a full detailed analysis of the other things that might be going on in their lives that might lead them to, that might need to be resolved, and if they were resolved, would remove this desire that they have to want to go through the whole transition process. So they're talking about improving data collection. Of course, that's the solution to all the world's problems is we need to collect more data. If only we could collect more data and feed it into an AI and have AI run everything. Yes, that's not what she says here, but it's always about we need more data. And so that's just another topic that I touched on. And I will touch on a little bit, actually, at the end of this video. If you can hear that, that's me tapping the book that talks about this topic. But in the article, they had, it tells us they had, back in 2015, GIDS had an independent consultant brought in to help managing the ever-increasing referrals, which had gone from 139 to 1,419 in 5 years. So this bit here is pretty interesting. She's talking about the differences in other countries. So in Finland and in the Netherlands, these are other two countries that have kind of world-leading treatment for these kind of people. for these people. Sounds really dismissive. I don't mean that. For this situation. But it's interestingly, right? So some stats, some data from Finland, specifically, more than 85% of those referred in Finland were natal girls. Most had first presented with gender dysphoria well after the onset of puberty. 13% were living in care or independently, and most startling, 3/4 had been or were currently undergoing child and adolescent psychiatric treatment for other reasons when they sought referral. Now, that's a massive correlation. So 85% were girls, and 3/4 of those have psychological problems so severe that they're undergoing psychiatric treatment. So do you think somebody with psychiatric problems and undergoing psychiatric treatment is in the right stage and state to decide that they want to take permanent life-altering surgery and life-altering pharmaceutical products that cannot be undone? I would say no. The young people referred to kids in England were very similar, but neither they nor the Finnish teenagers were anything like the young people of the landmark Dutch studies, in which the majority of patients did not have other significant problems. Indeed, young people starting a medical transition in the Netherlands had to be free of any other major psychological difficulties. They had to have a stable home life and had to have reported gender difficulties from childhood. So that's the way it should be done, right? That is the way it should be done. If although there should be a long checklist of like, okay, right, all these other things need to be in place. If they're not, they are more important, right? If you don't have a stable home life, if you are not free of psychological difficulties, then you need to address those things first, because they might the smoothing out and the fixing and the resolution of those things might give you a very different perspective and understanding on life that doesn't require you to then go ahead and take these drastic measures. So then Hannah tells us about visiting a conference in New York where there was data presented on puberty blockers and hormones being treated with young people. It says they did not fare very well. Since 2020, the Finns have viewed the use of medical interventions to treat gender distress in young people with caution. Psychotherapy is the first-line treatment, and while medical transition is allowed, it's mostly for those whose gender dysphoria began in early childhood and who have no co-occurring mental health conditions. So again, this is the theme coming out. You should have experienced this very young, very early in childhood, your whole life, but there should be no other things in place because childhood and growing up is a difficult time for young people. You have to find out who you are. You have to find out how you fit in. You have to learn to relate to other people. You have to build friendships and work out what a good friendship is and what a bad friendship is. You have to figure out how to be, an asset to the lives of people around you in order to be treated well, in order for people to value you, your comfort, your time, your energy, And all that takes a bit of work. And some people figure it out and some people don't. But what is happening here is when you are going through that whole process and you're unsure about where you fit in the world, someone comes along and says, well, maybe the problem is you were born in the wrong body. Like what does that even mean, right? Firstly, it presupposes that there is a real you separate from your body, which actually I'm on board with. You call it the soul, the spirit. I do kind of, there is an element to us that is not, that is like within or alongside, or it's kind of there's more to the human organism than just the physical body, right? The spirit, the soul. But how can you be born into the wrong body? This is the bit that I don't get, because they're sort of who's making that mistake? And who dictates what the right body is and how it and how it should be the right body? Like, whoops, it's like you order a cheeseburger and they give you a filet of fish, and there's the wrong filling is inside the burger. It's like, well, I want a chicken in here, but they've put fish in there. Okay, well, you can take it to the manager, hey, take it to the server. Hey, you gave me the wrong filling. But like when the wrong when you're born into the wrong body, like who's making that mistake? It's just incoherent. It's silly. It's not. There's too many questions. It raises too many questions that I think more people should be thinking about and asking, right? But you're offering that narrative to young people who are already going through a crazy time of change and adaptation and new feelings and puberty and hormones, and then you're just throwing that into the mix. It's like a hand grenade that is just guaranteed to cause confusion and chaos. Makes you wonder whether or not it's deliberate. And so the article continues, talking about Norway's approach, France, Denmark, cautioning medical transition in under 18s. I mean, there should be no medical transition available for under 18s. That's just obvious on the face of it, right? But the people who pushed it, the people who say this and stand up to say this, they are viewed as traitors by some. Yeah, they're viewed as traitors because they urge their colleagues to undertake comprehensive assessments before recommending powerful medications. You traitor! How dare you? How dare you try and stop me from giving powerful medications to under 18s and encouraging them to undergo surgery? Traitor. The conference organizers were branded anti-trans. Although the writer here, Hannah, she says she saw no evidence of that. She said the conference venue was kept secret to protect those taking part because some had stated on social media that they planned to disrupt the event. So an event entirely geared towards the protection and the safety of young people and the most, arguably one of the smallest minorities of young people and therefore vulnerable to all sorts of abuse. A conference held in the name of protecting those people was had to be kept secret because people would want to disrupt it. That's just wild. So yeah, some charities and politicians appear to see the scrutinizing the care provided to gender questioning young people as illegitimate. She says, when I first started covering this area of healthcare for Newsnight, along with my colleague, we faced criticism. Even though, she says, we never questioned the identities of young people or their right to transition. So her book, Time to Think, was turned down by 22 publishers, but it's on Amazon now. Even though the book is a bestseller, only one literary festival invited me to speak. Another booked me and later cancelled because of a scheduling issue. The truth is that while some young people insist they have been helped by a flagship specialist NHS service, others have most certainly been harmed. To deny the position a voice would be wrong, because after all, unlike other medical failures, this is a story yet to finish. All right, and I can't recommend her book because I haven't read it, I haven't got it. And I'm not sure if I will get it or read it. But one book that I can recommend, and this is going to be the first of the 5 books that we talk about on this episode, this is the moment you've all been waiting for, is this one. This is The Transgender Industrial Complex by Scott Howard. Now, good luck finding this book on Amazon. And I'm saying that because I know for a fact that it is not on Amazon anymore, despite the fact that it was on Amazon, because on the back here, it has a bunch of quotes from Amazon reviewers. I'll read a couple. Quite possibly one of the most well-written and researched books for everyday consumption on this particular subject. When you're done with the book, many more things that are strange about the world and its history will make a lot of sense. That was an Amazon review. Another one. Insanely well-researched and the most illuminating work out there, exposing the subversive racket that is the transgender phenomenon. A must-read for anyone searching for the truth. And another Amazon review. This is a must-read for parents and young adults that want to know the truth about the recent phenomenon of transgenderism and how it is used to hurt children, teens, and families. So some pretty spicy quotes there, but I can tell you that this book is 400 pages long. Right? And you're probably not going to be able to see this because my camera can't focus, but that is really, really small writing and text. And they're not joking when they say it's insanely well referenced. I mean, there's just footnotes all the way through this. It looks, you got about 320 footnotes here. There's appendices at the back. That's the book I would recommend you go out and get on this topic. It's, if you can find it. The publisher is Antelope Hill Publishing. And you'll have to get it from somewhere other than Amazon. So that's book one. So why is that book not on Amazon? That's a question I would like to hear your thoughts on. So leave me a comment underneath if you have something to say about that. All right, so moving on back to the articles. We've done primary school, we've done secondary school, and now what's going on at university on this topic of in Transnation. King's College London tells academics that backing Stonewall could boost careers. So this is so Stonewall, if you don't know, I'm here to help you learn. I got them up on Wikipedia. It's a charity formed 34 years ago, and it's all about LGBTQ plus human rights campaigning. They have a revenue of 7.8 million, which is not bad at all, and 130 staff, right? And what is happening is that King's College London is telling their faculty and their staff that backing and supporting this charity would boost their career. So they've released some guidance, and this is to guide their staff on how to achieve a promotion. The article says they are required to submit an application form that runs to 8 pages, one of which is titled Inclusion and Support, and lists working with groups such as Stonewall as an example of good practice. Guidance from the human resources team says you should evidence how you create an inclusive environment where colleagues are valued and able to succeed, how you develop themselves and others, and how you communicate in a way that enables people to excel. It says academics should use Part 5 of the promotion application form to detail specific activity undertaken to support the university's equality, diversity, and inclusion ambitions. And in a list of such examples, the guidance mentions participating in equality, diversity, and inclusion activity. And it gives some examples, including Stonewall, LGBTQ groups. So is this okay? Is this allowed and is this acceptable? Is your employer allowed to dictate what charities you should or should not support, and basically tell you, look, if you support these, that's going to look good, and we're going to be we're going to look favorably on that and reward you with promotions and career progression and money. That, to me, that is it seems a little insidious. I don't think it's my employer's business what charities I do or do not support, right? Nothing to do with that. It has no bearing on how well I do my job. But this is the world we're moving into. This is all part of what this book is talking about over here that I'm going to talk about soon. We had Dr. John Armstrong. He's pushing back. It's this chap here. He says, we're being told that if we campaign on Stonewall's behalf, it will help with our promotion. So what do you think about that? I mean, so we've got young primary school children are being taught these stories that it's okay that you might be born in the wrong body and you might have to change. And then secondary schoolers are being told that you can't do that, and we're not going to allow you to change your name and your pronouns and such anymore. And then university staff and professors are being told that they have to encourage and empower and support the biggest lobbyists for the transitioning of children in the UK in order to have a better shot at career progression. So it's kind of confusing. It's kind of all over the place, isn't it? You're getting mixed messages. And so you can see why this is such a hot topic, confusing, divisive issue, and how the wedge is thrust in there to cause people to split and shatter and fragment over this. Interestingly, when I was reading about Stonewall, I came down to this bit down here on their Wikipedia, which is opposition. And this tells us that in October 2018, critics urged Stonewall to acknowledge that a conflict exists between transgenderism and sex-based women's rights. And the CEO, Ruth Hunt, wrote back to say, nope, that's not true. So presumably she's quite happy for men to get in the boxing ring with females and beat them in the face with their fists, as well as men entering other sporting competitions. She obviously is totally cool with that and happy with it. Also writing in the Times, the co-founder and former Conservative MP criticized the charity for getting tangled up in the trans issue. Stonewall's policy on self-identification has been criticized by founding members. So there's even division within Stonewall. And actually, this has been pointed out before that, the LGBT, et cetera, it's just, they're different groups. And somebody somewhere has decided to lump them all in together and give them one symbol and force them all to be part of the same team, when actually that's not so clear cut. There's divisions within. And we shouldn't lump them all together, and we should be very nuanced and in our understanding that a T is not the same as a G, is not the same as an L, is not the same as a B. And if you want some good insight into that, you want to check out Owen Benjamin and his joke on this topic, which was actually stolen, right? It was plagiarized like so many of his jokes are. All right, we're into the final stretch of today's broadcast now. So the final part that we're going to look at is the history, right? So what could be behind all this stuff that's going on, all these divisive topics, all this energy to draw people's attention to these sort of issues and these things? Has it come out of nowhere? Was it just a total grassroots organic thing that just gained momentum because people care about it and people couldn't stop talking about it, and it's very important and it's a very pressing issue and it's the most pressing issue of our day? Or is there some sort of agenda or motivation to push this on people and have them thinking about it from primary school age and up? Well, an article that I came across this week might shed some light on this very topic. So this is from Substack. This is Igor's newsletter, and it has the title, Giant Leap, a plan to reduce birth rates by 81% in the next 70 years. The WEF and Earth for All wants us to have fewer great grandchildren. What? That is wild. Giant leap, reduce birth rates, a plan? Okay, so before we dive into this article, we got to do a little bit of grammar. So we got here in the subtitle, the WEF. What is the WEF? The WEF is a group called the World Economic Forum. And the World Economic Forum has been around for quite a while. In fact, I've got this book here, which is the World Economic Forum, A Partner in Shaping History, the First 40 Years. So that's the first. So they've been around quite a while. And if you open up this book, and unfortunately I don't have a book cam to show you, but this is dealing with the World Economic Forum from 1971 up to 2010. And it tells us all about how they started, the Davos Club, the spirit of Davos, the industry agenda. So there's quite a lot of chapters in here. But we got a foreword here by a gentleman some of you out there might recognize. It is Klaus Schwab. And he was a founder, and he held the first meeting in Davos, Switzerland, and that was back in 1971. And it was founded as a European Management Forum. And in Klaus's own words, he says that they're committed to entrepreneurship in the global public interest. The forum is firmly focused on the future. The history of the past 40 years should serve as an inspiration to our members to continue their work in the years ahead, ever committed to improving the state of the world. That sounds pretty good then. So it's a group of people, World Economic Forum, they're committed to shaping the future of the world. So why is it that they want to tell us to have fewer children and reduce our birth rates? Who are they to tell us that? Well, let's dive into this article. So the thought leaders who generate ideas for the World Economic Forum and the United Nations, what? United Nations? Have you heard of them? Same people. Propose measures to reduce the number of births in the next 70 years from 130 million to about 24 million per year. That is a 5 times reduction. The radical plans are public and very specific. The organization Earth for All is an influential sustainability think tank originating from the Club of Rome. They plan to save the planet with a scenario having a fitting name, Giant Leap. Okay, a few things to dwell on here as well. So Earth for All originate from the Club of Rome. What's the Club of Rome? Club of Rome. Okay, do we know anything about that? Who they are? Where they come from? The Club of Rome is, again, it's a think tank. It's a group of very wealthy people with power, with interests that they want to preserve and protect. It's a big club and you went in it, as George Carlin told us. And they got together and they're doing the similar thing to the World Economic Forum, which is like, how do we shape the future and how do we convince everyone that we're doing it because we care about them and it's in their best interests? Because we all know that wealthy industrialists and billionaires are philanthropic, and all they do all day is just think about how they can make your life better and my life better because they care about us so much, obviously. But the Club of Rome, we'll talk a little bit more about that later. But the first thing that stood out to me in this is they've called it the Giant Leap. Right? Does that sound familiar? I mean, there might be some history buffs in the audience. Does the Giant Leap ring any bells at all for you? Cast your mind back over the last 100 years. Does it sound familiar? What about this then? What about the Great Leap Forward? What was that? The Great Leap Forward, because that sounds pretty similar. This is the Giant Leap, and that was the Great Leap. So the Great Leap Forward was an economic and social campaign within the People's Republic of China from 1958 to 1962, led by the Chinese Communist Party. That sounds great. Great Leap Forward. Sounds like progress. Sounds like it sounds like shaping the future. We're going forward into the future, and we're shaping it. What happened? Millions of people died in China during, I shouldn't laugh, but they call it the Great Leap. Millions of people died, with estimates ranging from 15 to 55 million. And this was 1958 to 1962. So this was, hot off the back of World War II. And, World War II is the pinnacle of evil, as we are told, as our history lessons teach us, and as our social manipulation, mind control, propaganda programming would have us believe. But, 10 years later, a little over 10 years later, 15 to 55 million were killed during the Great Leap Forward. So, already I'm looking at this article about the Great Leap with a incredible amount of suspicion. Like, how are they going to achieve this 81% reduction in the birth rate? Are they going to do, like, this is the question. So they've called it the Great Leap, and that can't be accidental. There's no way these people don't know about that association and haven't put it there on purpose, right? So Earth for All, it's identified 5 extraordinary turnarounds to achieve the Great Leap scenario. And these are detailed in their proposal, which is pages 45 to 46. Just excuse me a moment. And we're back. So their proposal, you can read it. It's free. It's online. I will link to it underneath the video. And it's all about like modeling, and it's all about graphs and scaring you with statistics and data and information. And it looks like all my highlighting on this article has disappeared, which is handy. No problem. We can still find out the juicy bits. So the most important outcome of their project would be a reduction of childbirths by 81% by the year 2100. So, hopefully it's clear to you how the start of the show is connected into this bit. If you wanted to reduce childbirths, and they do, according to, their own publications, their own books, they admit this. If you wanted to do that, what would be a good way of doing it? Well, maybe you could confuse the heck out of young people and make them so unsure about who they are and what gender is and what sex is and what biology is and how to form lasting monogamous relationships and how to and aspire to be parents and to have children, you could just confuse children so much that by the time they've resolved all this contradiction and confusing information, they've lost the window has passed. Better yet, you could talk them into having surgery. You could talk them into having to taking chemicals that will render them unable to have children and infertile later on in life, right? So you can see how this movement kind of aligns with the stated goals here, particularly when you think about books such as the Scott Howard book, which is all about the funding and the money and where it comes from and who is pumping cash and resources into this movement to get it into our schools. But their projections, in this, to go back to the Earth for All, they have this whole plan, and it's a lot of graphs and it's a lot of data, it's a lot of statistics, and this is all to scare people because people get scared of graphs and very large numbers, and they tend to accept more restrictions on their freedoms. They tend to be more able to be controlled and willingly be controlled when they're presented with graphs and data. But they are publicly announcing it says here, the publicly announced plan boringly amounts to removing many existing reasons for having children. It also sounds like many very nice progressive feel-good ideas that have far-reaching consequences. So some of the suggestions are to how they're going to achieve this. Impoverished people and smallholder farms tend to have children to help with the family farms or as a social safety net for older age. So the plan proposes to eliminate poverty by initiating massive economic transfers from wealthy countries to impoverished countries, right? So the countries which don't have poverty are going to have to send all their shit to countries that do have poverty, thereby impoverishing the countries that did have poverty. It's kind of you can see how this is not going to solve the problem. It's just going to make everybody impoverished. So the other thing that they want to get on to is they want to empower women. Noting that women with free time tend to have children, Earth for All recommends empowering women with many beneficial effects, which would make women folk busy with life goals other than having children. So empowering women just means get them into the workforce, get them snowed under with boring bullshit jobs, and so they don't have any free time or any free capacity or any free space to think about even having children. And that's happening more and more. There was a time in the past where one income would be enough to run a household, to have a car, to have holidays, and to allow a parent to stay at home to look after the children. That used to be possible. That is no longer possible anymore. Now you've got to have 2 incomes and 2 side hustles just to be able to pay your gas bill. Is it by accident? Or does it perfectly align with this publicly published and stated plan? Okay, the other thing, they want to upgrade the economic system. Economic growth with steady expansion of housing, roads, and resources also favors having children who can easily start another household after they grow up. We got to get rid of that. Instead of economic growth, Earth for All and the WEF advocate for degrowth. That is, a reduction in the resources such as housing or food consumed. There it is. So they're advocating economic degrowth. So if you're wondering why it's getting really hard to pay the bills, why it's getting really hard for young people to get on the housing ladder, why your money's not going as far, the prices of everything is going up, it is because the policy advocated is economic degrowth. And that is what you're living through. And the whole purpose is to get the birth rate down enough by 2100, although I think their time frame is actually a bit more immediate than that. So if you don't believe me, the World Economic Forum has an article here, Degrowth, what's behind the economic theory and why does it matter right now? There's a video on it there by CNBC, mainstream stuff. After asking, is degrowth workable, the WF experts explain that degrowth makes perfect sense to them. Degrowth supporters also have compelling arguments. Well, after asking, it's the World Economic Forum experts, right? It makes perfect sense to them because they're getting paid to say that. Why don't you ask the experts who aren't getting paid by the WEF? See what they think. And they use this. They say that this plan has every chance of succeeding because it worked in mouse colonies. All right. So, if you didn't know, what the social engineers of our world like to do is they like to experiment on mice, and they run all these experiments and they do things to them, and then they use the things they learn there to run society and to get people to think and behave and in a certain way, in a specific, so they can predict the outcomes and so they can keep on top of everything. They practice on mice first. And this is an introduction, an overview of the Calhoun mouse experiment. Famous biologist, and he ran the Mouse Utopia experiment. So what he did, he just eliminated every bad thing. He gave them a perfect environment to live in. No hunger, no cold, no hazards of living in the wild. It was a miniature socialist mouse city. Sounds like heaven, right? Dr. Calhoun asked, what happens if, instead of endangered living, mice are placed in an equivalent of a modern 15-minute city with unlimited food and an absence of disease and predation? It turned out they loved it at first. Their original, I think they had 18 mice at first. Yeah, it peaked at 2,200 mice. But what happened once the population had peaked? Well, eventually deviant behavior emerged. Maladjusted females began isolating themselves like hermits, and maladjusted males took to grooming all day, preening and licking themselves. And they just stopped having any interest in sex and having any interest in reproduction. A few even started to attack their own young. This is the mice mothers there. They started to attack their own young or abandon them to leave them to die of neglect. So in the end, the colony completely died off. There's no lack of food or water, no disease emerged. The mice simply stopped reproducing, and the utopian mouse city went extinct. Fascinating. So the question is, will humanity die off? Is the similar thing going to happen? Well, it's funny, really, isn't it? Because they've done these experiments and they use these to inform the way they run our societies and what they plan for us in the future. It suggests that they should just let us get on with it. They should allow us to reproduce freely and allow us to solve things like disease and food insecurity. And then eventually we will all just die off because we'll lose interest in reproduction. But they know that wouldn't happen. They know that if we had a good economic outlook and financial security and food security and freedom to stay home and raise our children instead of having to be wage slaves, they know that we would have more children. They know that it's not going to work for humans, right? So they are running a different game on us. They're running a very different game indeed. So the article ends with asking this question. Is humanity going to die off? And of course, we can't predict the future. But he does mention something that I've talked about here before, which is in many countries, numerous women and men already choose not to have progeny. Birth rates have fallen way below replacement levels. Japan and South Korea are leading the way. So it's already happening. And Japan and South Korea, these are the most technologized societies. They have the fastest internet. They have the coolest Black Mirror fondle slabs. They are way ahead. And this is what's happening. They're just not bothering to have children anymore. They are also two of the most overworked societies. The work ethic there is you give everything, you sacrifice everything. You get in an hour before work starts, you socialize, and you go to the pub every evening with your colleagues. And the work ethic there is extremely strong, and it is expected because there's a sort of social pressure from everybody else that you got to play the game in this way. And so people are just saying, well, having children is messy, dirty, expensive, and time consuming. So what's the point? Why bother? Why not just live for myself, give myself the things I want, buy myself the toys and the gadgets and the gizmos that I want to have, and just skip the whole father mother experience. What's the point? But I do like the optimistic note at the end of this article. He says, perhaps in the long run, humanity will self-select for a possibly small subpopulation that chooses to have children despite seemingly no good economic reasons to be parents. Parents of the future might even have to persevere despite being mocked and ridiculed by the childless majority. I saw this in a film, not a film, it was an episode of Love, Death and Robots on Netflix, and this exact scenario was the case. And it was dystopian, and it was kind of dark and dismal, as you could imagine. So, interesting stuff. And what I liked about this article is it brought our attention to the World Economic Forum and Earth for All, who are very real. They exist. And as we looked, we just saw the World Economic Forum's book, The First 40 Years. Another book I wanted to, this is book 3 of the topic today, is, I mentioned Klaus Schwab. He's the founder. He has his own book. He has a number of books, actually, but this one is Shaping the Future of the Fourth Industrial Revolution. And I've corrected the title there, as you can see, because he's got a very strong accent that makes him sound like an evil Bond villain. But this is all about the Fourth Industrial Revolution. It's about AI, data collection. It's about cryptocurrencies. It is about gene editing technologies that can be administered into your body via a syringe. And he is going full steam ahead. Him and his cohort are going full steam ahead in designing the future and planning it. And they have a desired stated goal of reducing the birth rate. So that is book 3 of today's book recommendation. I said I had 5 books for you. I got 2 more. So the first thing, we'll just go back to the browser. I wanted to show you, here is the working paper from Earth for All. And it's pretty long. It's got 97 pages. And these are the questions that they're trying to deal with. And it's about humans exploiting the natural resources. Can we have circular economy? How many people can live on the earth? How many people could live sustainably on the earth? Leading up to this question 5, if any or several of the answers to the questions above is less than the current population, the question becomes, what are the most appropriate and important measures to reach a long-term sustainable global population according to the best available scientific evidence? So that's what this is all about. It's about how do we reduce population scientifically? And it has to be done scientifically because science is the religion of the modern age. Trust the science, believe the science. That is a topic I'm going to cover in a future stream. I've already started building that one and putting it together. But they need to scientifically control the population, and they state it openly. And so is this a new thing? Or is there some sort of historical precedent? Has this been going on for a while and we just haven't known about it? Well, this is book 4 that I wanted to get on your radar. This is called The Limits to Growth. Published in 1972. The message of this book still holds today. So this is 1972, right? The Earth's interlocking resources, the global system of nature in which we all live, probably cannot support present rates of growth much beyond the year 2100. Oh, there's that year again mentioned, 2100. If that long, even with advanced technology. In the summer of 1970, an international team of researchers at the Massachusetts MIT Institute of Technology began a study on the implications of continued worldwide growth. They examined 5 basic factors. And what did they conclude? Well, you have to read the book to find out. But the book contains a message of hope as well. Man can create a society in which he can live indefinitely on Earth if he imposes limits on himself and his production of material goods to achieve a state of global equilibrium with population and production in carefully selected balance. So again, it's kind of like last stream where free speech, we can have it as long as we control it and police it. It can be totally free. You can say whatever you want as long as it is controlled and policed by who? Exactly. Now that's the key question. So the limits to growth, why do I mention this? Well, because can we have a look at the cover here? No, my bad. I didn't pull up the PDF. But the cover, the limits to growth, this is you can read it kind of there, a report for the Club of Rome, right? So the Club of Rome, as we learned in this article here, the Club of Rome is a sort of predecessor to this Earth for All organization. The organization, an influential sustainability think tank originating from the Club of Rome. The Club of Rome, they commissioned and produced this book, The Limits to Growth. And So the question is, going back into the history, well, who started the Club of Rome? Where did the Club of Rome come from? Well, one of the original founders of the Club of Rome is this man, Aurelio Pache. And he has a quote attributed to him, which is, "The common enemy of humanity is man. In searching for a new enemy to unite us, we came up with the idea that pollution, the threat of global warming, water shortages, famine, and the like would fit the bill. The real enemy, then, is humanity itself." What? Wow. Did he really say that? It seems crazy, right? I mean, but here it is on a website, so it must be true. Well, not necessarily. So I had to look into this, and I asked around. I got some very well-read and learned friends, and they pointed me to this book, which is book 5 of today's broadcast that I want to put on your radar. And this is The First Global Revolution. This is a report by the Council of the Club of Rome. And this is by Alexander King and Bertrand Schneider. And we can go down here and we can see that it's copyright 1991. And this is a scan of the first edition. And what we can do here is we're looking for this quote, right? And I was told that it's here. So I can go Control F and we can type in the word humanity. And then we can start scanning through all the different parts of the book where this word humanity is used. And if we get about halfway through the book, we will come to a part which says the common enemy of humanity is man. The common enemy of humanity is man. So that's there it is right there. That's the quote we just read. But he goes on to say, in their totality and in their interactions, these phenomena do constitute a common threat which demands the solidarity of all peoples. But in designating them as the enemy, we fall into the trap about which we have already warned, namely mistaking symptoms for causes. All these dangers are caused by human intervention, and it is only through changed attitudes and behavior that they can be overcome. The real enemy, then, is humanity itself. There it is. The enemy is humanity itself. We need to turn everybody against themselves. We need these people to believe that they are the problem. And in that way, we can shape and change their attitude and behavior. We can get them to stop having children, or stop having so many children, and so you can see the ominous sort of continuity there of this agenda. And I think it is not a watertight case. It is not 100%, but it helps you understand the bigger picture in a better way. It helps you connect things because you can see there's the trans agenda, which we've been focusing on today, but then there's also the global warming climate change agenda, which has been going on everywhere as well, and is also is also our children are also indoctrinated in school with that agenda as well, and so you can step back and you can see that these things make sense from the point of view of people like the World Economic Forum and the Club of Rome and Klaus Schwab and Aurelio Pache. They want us to think that we do not have a right to have children, right? They want us to think that it's selfish and it is bad for the environment and bad for the planet. And not only that, but it'd be better for us if we just enjoy our lives. Just do you. Don't worry about the future. Don't worry about civilization and society. We'll grow some babies in test tubes. You just have fun, play your games, play with your toys, watch your Netflix, drink, have sex, go to nightclubs and party and all that stuff, and just live an extended adolescence and leave the future of humanity to us, the psychopathic, technocratic, scientific overlords who want to push technocracy, data gathering, AI as the god of society that makes all the decisions on what you can and cannot do and what you do and do not have access to, and the freedoms you have to go where you want to go, do the jobs you want to do, say the things you want to say. All of that is under attack and is being folded into a really scary system of control. And if you're not trying to connect dots, and if you're not trying to read and learn about these the motivations and the plans that are laid out by these people in their own books, in their books that are published, that you can buy online,
that you can read, then you're going to fall prey to them, and you're going to fall into the traps that they are laying and setting up and putting out there for everyone. That is it for today's show. Again, and these are getting longer and longer. I need to trim these down a little bit and get to the point a bit quicker, I think. But we made it. We arrived. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. And if you're here live, wonderful. If you're here after the fact, wonderful. We've got to really connect these dots, really be open, and that's what I'm trying to do. I'm just trying to, in 2 hours, give you a bit of the picture that that would take you much longer to get if you were reading all these things yourself and analyzing them, right? So if you found any value in what I did today, that is great. That fills my heart with joy. You can support me by looking in the links underneath this video. Lots of good stuff down there, lots of free resources that will help you learn and understand the world and how it works. Lots of courses that are I'm my affiliates. They're people who I endorse and I look up to and I admire and I think are doing really, really good work, and who inspire me to do my own humble contribution, because this really is important, and there are not enough people with an accurate enough understanding of reality. There's a lot of people who are confused, who are getting bogged down in the divisive crap that is spewed at us through our telescreens every day, and I'm trying to remedy that, trying to put some signal out there in amongst the noise. So if you like what I do, the usual stuff: like, comment, share, subscribe. Awesome. If there's somebody out there who you think would benefit from this video, send it to them. Tell them that it's because you care about them and you're trying to help them understand, and you think that the case I've laid out today might make sense to them. And I have an Instagram you can have a look at, where I post books and quotes. I also have a Buy Me a Coffee page. You can click on there and you can send me a little fiat currency, which I will use to pay the bills, keep the heating on, keep the lights on, and I might even buy a book or two. But I don't really need any more books at this point. I think I've done pretty well, and I've got a good collection going. All right, that is it. I'm done. I'm going to stop. Over and out. Much love to you all. Take care. Hopefully